Welcome, everyone, to our second wellness advocate interview on the podcast. I'm so excited today to have my good friend, Patsy, here. Patsy, can you just introduce yourself and let us know, what you're going to be talking about today?
So my name is Patsy Berridge. I am 31 years old, and I don't act it at all. I am going to be speaking over my sobriety and just how I've managed to reach almost 850 days of it, even through the fun year of 2020.
I love it. So tell us a little bit about you. What do you do? What's kind of your background, and what's your roles now?
So up until 2 years ago, I was a really, really phenomenal blackout artist. I was really good at not dealing with my emotions. I was really good at showing up as somebody else, showing up as somebody that I thought the collective or the crowd wanted. But since getting sober 2 years ago, so much of that has shifted. I now solely focus on a more holistic lifestyle that does include my sobriety, my food, my drinks, the things that I have in my home, the products that I put in and on my body. I am doing it like completely, like all around, full circle, starting from like the easiest thing and working my way up to the hardest. As far as just like, I say releasing toxins and toxic things, but that is more than just like products or materials. That's people, that's thoughts, alcohol, drugs, different kinds of things. So that's like my main focus now. And I love to help people figure out ways to start doing that for themselves.
I love it.
Oh, I love this. I'm so excited, guys. Kind of stuff. So everybody knows Amanda and I and the holistic wellness, and we're a whole person. So do you mind sharing like your personal experience with just your mental health journey, as well as your addiction and substance use, and your little bit of your journey in finding recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of a hard one to start because I feel like everything that's happened in my life played an effect into me creating and starting an addiction, and also overcoming that addiction. But from a very young age, I grew up with a very big family. There was always kids in the household, bare minimum 4 kids in the household. I was a professional competitor. My mother loved to put me in anything and everything she could. And looking back, I understand that was just her being a mother, trying to set her children up for success. So they had, an avenue of different things to pick from. But in the process of going through dance and pageants and cheerleading and piano and just all these different things on top of moving a crap ton of times in my childhood, created a lot of, number one, instability. But then number two, I seeked all of everything from an external standpoint, from cheerleading to competitions, like anything that comes with a competition, you are performing for another person and their judgment is everything. And so when you grow up in that for 16 years, it gets to a point where like life is a competition for you. Everything is a competition for you. Everything, you're constantly worried about what other people are thinking. And so having that on top of, like, we all know how hard childhood is, even if you have a stable home, even if you never move a day in your life. Like, we all know how hard childhood is, teenage years, adolescence, bullying, getting picked on, all these different things. So whenever you tie that into somebody who has gone through from a very young age, constantly worrying about what other people think, it became the only thing that I could think about. Every time I moved to a new school, every time I tried to make a new friend, every time I tried to do anything with anybody, it was who do I need to be right now so I can be liked? Who do I need to be right now so I can be accepted, so I can be appreciated, recognized, seen, whatever, all the things. And it's kind of like, it's a little bittersweet to say this because I grew up in a household where my mother doted on me and did everything for me. So in a sense, I was like this little bitty like protected China doll that she had. And whenever we ended up moving, and of course, the older you get, the more experiences you get in the real world. Slowly, that little bubble was just starting to get like burst each and every time. And it was like little bitty scars were being left on my heart, my worthiness, how much I thought about myself, how much I cared about myself, because each and every little comment or attack was just like chipping away at my heart, or at that, like what we start out with, like maybe a full circle of worthiness, was just slowly becoming less and less and less. And eventually I met my first sip of alcohol, and my first time I ever smoked weed, I was 11 years old. And it didn't become a thing at that time. It was just one of those situations where I was just in the environment and it was offered to me, and I did it. But we'll fast forward to years later, and about 14 is whenever drinking and drugs really kind of set into my life on a regular basis. And I was, again, because of the past, I very much was still seeking validation externally. And it turned into seeking validation from men through the people that I was dating. I would not pick the greatest people. And then on top of that, it also flowed over into my friendships. I was also picking people that were not necessarily really there for me. And so that just years and years of that piling up over little bitty things happening, big things happening, like loss of friends, family members. I had a miscarriage about 2012. And then right after my miscarriage, I got my first DWI. And I got that DWI on the night that my grandfather passed away. And so from the day that I had my miscarriage, it seemed to be this like the miscarriage was the domino that fell, that pushed everything to just kind of like start to crumble. And it's a blessing in disguise to look back on now, because had everything not crumbled, I may not be sitting here over 800 days sober.
Right.
But in those moments, it was so hard to see that. And so, that happened 2012, lost my grandfather, got my DWI. And in 2014, I met my now husband. And 2 days after, well, I say met, we had known each other. We started dating. 2 days after we had started dating, I lost my oldest brother, and he committed suicide. He suffered from PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and alcoholism. He tried to quit cold turkey and ended up having a seizure while driving a work vehicle, and that started his downward spiral. He battled with his addiction till the day that he died, and it eventually got the best of him. And the day that I found out that my brother passed away, I remember looking at my mom and saying, like, I'm not going to let this happen to me. Like, I'm not going to let alcohol take over me like it did him. And boy, did I think I was strong that day. Because the very next day, it was like everything that I thought, all that strength that I thought I was going to have, shot out the window. And I instantly focused on having to be strong for my mom. I didn't want anything happening to her. And I almost like pushed away the pain. And so what happened then, I turned to the bottle. And for the next 4 years almost, I think it was a little over 4 years, I proceeded to just drink away the misery. And I mean, it got to the point where I was blacked out and drunk more than I was awake. And that's it, because I don't think I was ever sober. I was awake, but I don't know if I was ever sober. I was either detoxing, coming down, or getting ready to start drinking again. And so that happened for over a 4-year period. And I remember over that time, I sat with it so many times. It'd be so many nights I was just sitting there with my emotions and drunk and just thinking like, Patsy, what are you doing to yourself? Like, what are you doing with your life? And, you know, this whole entire time, my husband, he's now my husband, he never left. He never said like, oh, I can't deal with this. This is too much. Like, he looked at me whenever he found out my brother passed and was like, go get your dog. You're staying the weekend with me. I don't want you to be by yourself. And he never left, you know what I mean? And obviously neither did I. And I'm so, so lucky to have that support system. But at the time, I didn't know, like, I had never had that before. And I didn't know that's what that was. All I knew is that I was in pain and I didn't know how to deal with it. And my way of dealing with it was just drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, you know, 2 years into that, and things started happening where I started blacking out even more and even more. And I would have more nights or more mornings of waking up still intoxicated, having to go to work. I had to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, while during I was drinking. And so waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, that doesn't give you much time to sober up. So I really started to have that shame and that guilt set in. Mm-hmm. And I call it my pre-turning 30 breakdown, because I was 29 when I decided to get sober. And for 2 years, I realized like I was coming up on 30, but there was nothing to show for myself. I had absolutely nothing to show for myself. You look at the time, if you looked in my home, I mean, it was just a collection of things that people had given me. I had never gone out and bought my own bed or my own couch or anything like that. And to this day, I still look at that almost as like, that's a really awesome thing for people to do, because I'm just now getting to the point in my financial standpoint where I could actually save to go do things like that, because I'm not wasting so much money on alcohol. Mm-hmm. I just like lost my train of thought.
That's okay. Patsy, I'm so thankful for your vulnerability, because you're giving me chills, and I'm sure you're giving a lot of listeners chills and validation of their experiences, you know, and I so appreciate that, and I see you. And
yeah. Thank you.
It's powerful.
You know, and it's now, like, looking back, I'm grateful for everything that's happened, but in those moments, it was so hard to see, like, why did I lose my brother? Like, why did that have to happen? But it also goes back to, like, had I not lost him, maybe my relationship with alcohol wouldn't have ever been so bad, and I would have kept teetering with it, and I would have maybe never have like questioned my relationship with alcohol. So having that happen and having me go head first into the bottle and almost drowned in it was obviously hard. But at the same time, some people, like, I joke around and call it like a little like Gibbs slap on the back of the head, because I love NCIS. But that's what it was. It was like I kept getting slapped up against the back of the head. And finally, after 2 years, I was laying there one night after a weekend of binge drinking. And it was the day after Father's Day. And I had given myself alcohol poisoning over the weekend. And I was laying there. I had been sent home from work because I was too hungover and too sick to stay at work. And by the time I got home, I spent the rest of the day throwing up water, dry heaving, and like begging God just to take my headache away. Like, I was in so much pain. Mm-hmm. And I remember laying there, and it was like starting to get dark at night, and I knew my husband was on his way home, and I was just like pleading with whatever was out there. I was like, I don't know if there's a God right now. I don't know if it's a universe. I don't know if there's anybody. But if there is, whatever it is, please just take this like anxiety and this pain that I have inside, and the shame and the guilt, and I will never drink again. And I had said that for years prior to this moment. But the moment that my husband walked in the door, I stood up and I looked at him and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I am literally throwing my life away. I'm pissing it away. I had nothing to show for myself. And I mean, it was like in that instant, I was ready to flip the switch in that moment. after a 2-year fight and a 2-year buildup, I was like, I'm fucking done. Sorry for cussing, but I was like, I'm done. I don't want this anymore. Like, I've been miserable for so long and it's not serving me.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, what can I do to switch this up? Because like something's got to give.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I hear you say like there was multiple, blips on that 2-year journey where you acknowledged, you were like, I have a problem. What I'm doing isn't working. It's, making me feel worse, but I don't know what else to do with it. But then it sounds like in that moment was that point where you said, whatever it is, I want to find what it is to think about this for myself.
Yeah. I questioned my drinking for years with my husband, and I'd ask him, do you think I have a problem? Do you think I'm turning into my brother, was usually the question that I would ask, because that was my biggest fear. And I knew how I felt inside, and I didn't want that, because I also am a very, very emotional being, and I embrace that now. But prior to getting sober, I didn't know how to handle the emotions. Mm-hmm. And my biggest fear was making a permanent decision based on a temporary emotion. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that permanent decision is taking your own life, and that can't be brought back. Mm-hmm. And that was my biggest fear, was one night I was going to drink so much and be in a place of so much pain that it wasn't that I had like contemplated on committing it. It was the fear of what I would do with so much alcohol in my system, and then on top of the pain. Right. And that's what scared me. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. What happens if I get behind the wheel of a car? Yeah. What happens if I hurt someone else? Mm-hmm. So it was all these things that started to like build up and build up and build up. And finally, it just had built up so much that I was like, I don't know if AA is the answer. I don't know if I need a sponsor. I don't know if I need someone to hold my hand for the next 15 years. All I know is something has to happen. Like
I have this insight in my hands, this level of insight up until this point. And you did something with that.
Mm-hmm.
You stepped into your power.
Yeah, I did. I had decided for the first time in almost 30 years that I was going to take that back. I was going to fight back against the thing that I had let for so long control me. Yeah. And I don't have any regret, or I'm not angry at myself for letting that addiction take over me for as long as it did, because for starters, it was introduced to me at a very young age, when I was very vulnerable, when I was very impressionable. And then for second, alcohol is an addictive substance. It literally doesn't matter how strong of a person you are. It can, if you allow it, get the best of you. Mm-hmm. Just the same with drugs, just the same with sex, just the same with shopping and eating, and all these different avenues or outlets that we try to use to escape from our everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. So we found recovery. We've got over 800 days sober. How do you, on the daily basis, sustain your recovery? Especially, like you said in the beginning, 2020, man, right? So many people are struggling with mental health they've never experienced before, with substance use they've never experienced before, or it's re-triggering, right? Things are being re-triggered and it's coming back at an all-time high. So how do you stay sober? What do you do?
So for me, in just the basic beginning of my sobriety, I went to therapy once a week. I talked to my husband every single day. I talked to my mother. Like, I found a handful of people that could support me in the ways that I needed supporting. And I say that because there are going to be people in your life whenever you stop doing certain things. Let's say it is with just alcohol, for just example. Whenever you stop drinking, you will need to start surrounding yourself with people who support that. Because if you keep surrounding yourself with those people who want you to keep drinking, or they just want to keep hanging out with you, you will end up becoming the company that you keep. Yep. No matter how hard you try, it will end up either doing one or two things. You will fall and succumb back to it, or you are going to be so miserable the entire time because you were so triggered and just you haven't worked through it because you keep surrounding yourself through it. So definitely finding a group of people, whether it's a therapist, whether it's going to AA, whether it's just finding 2 or 3 people that are in the same boat as you, but finding people to talk to.
Patsy, can I ask, I'm sorry, I see that being a huge barrier because of the guilt and shame, right? So was that something just innate you knew you had to do and you felt comfortable doing it with those people? Or how did you overcome the guilt and shame to reach out and say, I have a problem and I need you to be my accountability partner?
So that person was, the first person for me was my husband with
that.
And he said, okay, let's do it. Like whatever you need. And in that very moment, he said, I will stop drinking with you. And that was phenomenal for me. Now that's not the case for everybody.
Right.
Some people are in relationships and the other person has no desire to change. And that usually ends up causing a separation in the relationship and going back to the whole, it might not look or feel great then, but that will be the best thing in the long run. But you know, I think it was admitting it to myself more than it was admitting it to other people. I think the people that I went to first in my life already knew. My mother already knew. Chris already knew. It was me that needed that, like, face-to-face, hey, it's time for you to voice this. It's time for you to vocalize this. And it's time for you to realize that this is your reality right now. Because I, for so long, had kept running from it. So after I'd gotten, and then of course, I think also going to therapy in the very initial first 6 months was a way to kind of like, it was like my therapist slowly pulled things out and slowly started to help me see just like how hard I was on myself and how I needed to like let loose and let back. Because each week I'd go in and I'd be like, man, but I did this and I did that and I didn't do this. And it was always this battle. And he's like, but did you drink? And I'm like, well, no. And he's like, so what are you worried about? Like, why are you so hard on yourself? And that was just so hard because in the beginning, we have to remind ourselves that we didn't create this problem overnight. And so working through and overcoming this problem isn't going to happen overnight. But that's just the hard part to choke down.
And the competitive Patsy from childhood, right, was like, this is another game I have to win. And I have to win it all or nothing, right? That black and white thinking that comes along with addiction and mental health oftentimes. It's either I do it all or I'm a failure and I just go back to drinking.
And, you know, to that whole black and white aspect, I don't know what I thought whenever I was going to get sober. But I thought for some reason, getting rid of the alcohol, like stepping away from the bar and getting away from the alcohol was going to be the hard part. That was not the hard part. What they don't tell you is with sobriety, with getting sober, with getting clean, with anything of that nature, whenever you stop turning to other avenues to cope and escape with life, is you start to feel again. You start to feel all of the great, but you also start to feel all of the uncomfortable. And it's whenever you are in those, and of course in the beginning, all you feel is that uncomfortability. Nothing feels normal. Everything feels like you're like, oh, it feels like you're not even supposed to be in your own skin. That's what it felt like to me. And it was because I literally had shocked my system. I had gone from 15 years of talking down to myself, putting myself down in front of other people, drinking, doing drugs, running from my problems, you name it. So all of a sudden waking up and being like, I'm going to face my problems today. So that was, you know, a big transition. And so I'm grateful that I had a year of that prior to 2020. But to talk about dealing and working through sobriety during such an emotional and uncertain year, always, and this is the thing that did it for me, my like core solid foundation of my sobriety is spirituality and mindset. Those are the two things that literally keep me going every single day. And the one thing that keeps me going right now is knowing deep down inside, just disregard all the distractions and everything going on around me, that I am divinely protected and I am divinely guided. And that disregard how something may feel in this moment, it will be okay. Things will be okay. The feeling will pass. the election will pass, like all of this stuff in the world, COVID will pass, whatever it is that you're stuck on right now, it will eventually pass. And my only suggestion and my only advice is to release that grip that you have over it right now, because sometimes whenever we're pretty much fearful of the uncertain is what it is. None of us have no idea what's coming next, right? And so a lot of us are like, well, screw it, YOLO, I'm going to do whatever I want, when that's the last thing we need to be doing, especially if you have any sort of fear of like getting sick. The number one thing you should be doing is taking care of your mind, body, and soul. And so, yeah, like definitely focus on that and just know everything will be okay. And my probably number one thing that I do whenever I'm feeling chaotic in my head, I absolutely love essential oils. So I grab an oil to help calm me. And it's usually the oil called gratitude. And I love to create not only a mental and like sensory thing to use by like, smelling it, but I also love the physicality of it. So anytime I'm physically feeling anxious or overwhelmed or mad, I can grab something out and physically touch it and put it on my body and look at it and see gratitude. And I'm like, okay, what can I be grateful for in this moment? Blah, blah, blah. I literally bring myself back to gratitude. And that's why that oil for me is such a good one, because it allows that. Sometimes the people have a hard time with the unseen. And so that allows me to be able to have something tangible and physical and a routine to kind of help me like, okay, we're feeling worked up. We need to move this. We need to shift this. What can we do? And so I love taking something like that. And it can be something totally different for you. It can be a lucky charm or your favorite picture of somebody that calms you, or, it can be absolutely anything. But for me, that's the one thing that I love.
All the mindfulness tools in there too, right? Like, what can you feel? What can you see? What can you smell? You're just hitting all the points. I love it.
Yeah, I think
the routine. I love that. Like something that, because our brain is turning to the things that are that we know are going to give us the same feeling every time. That's quick. That's like all of those things. But you've totally shifted that, but in a healthy way for you.
Yeah, and I think routine. For a lot of people that don't know, I'm a huge essential oil lover. I actually grabbed my starter kit of oils before I got sober, not knowing exactly what was going to happen. I could just tell, like I could feel something inside was a lot of stuff was like bubbling up and moving around, and I could feel something was happening. I just didn't know what. And almost a month after getting my oils, I decided to finally get sober. And I was so grateful that I had them prior to getting sober, because even if I didn't realize the effect they were having on me, the fact that I was getting up every morning and I would apply an oil, I would put an oil in the diffuser, I would smell it, I would do whatever, it slowly built up those little bitty small steps that it took to create a routine. So then going to therapy once a week was like, okay, this is routine. This is what, this is what I need right now. Anytime I get frustrated or worked up, pull out my journal or pull out an oil and do something physical. If you don't have a journal with you, pull out your phone and write in your notes, brain dump, get the stuff out. But those little bitty things help me create a routine that helped me slow down. That was a big thing for me. I was just a go, constantly showing up for other people, never slowing down to take care of myself. And so for the first time in my life, I was pulling back, slowing down, and checking in with myself, asking myself, how do you feel right now? How does your body feel? Are you thirsty? Are you tired? Are you anxious? Are you tense? Do you feel it up here? Or is your jaw tense? Those little bitty things, I feel like we don't slow down long enough to pay attention to those. And that's what propels us throughout the day into those bad moods, anxiety attacks, worked up, situations, whatever it is. And it was like, had you just taken 5 minutes, 2 hours ago to work through whatever frustration that was, it may not have carried over. And so all of that, like creating that routine definitely helped.
Patsy, I just have to say, like, you just took everything that we talk about as therapists, the buildup of stress and trauma in the body, right? And how we can't just go through life on autopilot, not listening to ourselves and what we need, and just like trailing this carcass behind us and wondering why it's not functioning right.
Right.
And you just put that into a, you know, Patsy's not a licensed therapist, okay? She's a human being. She's had this, right? She's had this experience, and she's been so insightful to understand you have to listen to your body, and it's not selfish. And that's the thing to overcome in general too, right? Like, oh no, I can't focus on me. I've been taught I have to be strong for others.
Absolutely. Yep. And you know, it's crazy how I feel like I have matured and wizened, whatever the word is, up and so much in the last 2 years, but it's because for the first time in my life, I'm paying attention. And, you know, to the whole thing about the body, our bodies, guys, look at how do we take care of ourselves on a regular basis? We binge watch TV. We go to McDonald's. We go to Starbucks. We go to Chick-fil-A. We go to all of these places and grab all of these foods and drinks because it's instant gratification and it's fast and it allows us to just go. But at the end of the day, do you sit down to actually thank this body that has allowed you to just go and continuously put all of that crap in it? No, hardly any of us do. And that was one thing that I realized with my sobriety was like, Patsy, you drank for so many years. You put yourself in so many dangerous situations. You gave yourself alcohol poisoning, overdose, these multiple of different things, and your body is still here. She is still supporting you. Like, what? How beautiful is that? And so when I finally got sober, I vowed, I was like, I'm going to start taking care of you. You have literally loved me on my darkest days and never gave up on me. It's my turn to return the favor. And that's why I feel like this whole holistic lifestyle all around is so vitally important, because we are more than just our soul. We are more than just our body. We are mind, body, and soul. And so it's just so important.
Oh, I love that. And then, you know, it's like, it comes down to, like, I've heard you say, because like our next, you know, point that we really wanted to get out there for just all of our, you know, listeners, whether they are professionals, we're all humans. So out of those things, what do you think are the most, like, just a handful of realistic tools that our listeners can start implementing today just to support overall healing and wellness? Because I heard you say routine and self-compassion, like all of these things, obviously they can implement, but anything else like that comes to your mind that they can start doing?
My number one rule for all of it is going to be grace upon grace upon grace. With everything that's going on right now, whether it's COVID 2020 or not, embarking on something new, embarking on something different, embarking on something difficult. We are human. None of us are going to be perfect overnight. None of us are going to be successful overnight. It takes practice and it takes grace. Just have grace on yourself. And if you struggle or if you take a step forward and fall 3 back, it's okay. Literally, it is okay. Just get up tomorrow and try again. Like, my only, like, that, I guess, to piggyback off of grace upon grace is show up for yourself and don't give up on yourself. Mm-hmm. And showing up for yourself can look totally different for everybody. For me, showing up for myself is, I love to create a routine. I love to wake up in the morning time. My favorite is to wake up before the sun comes up because I love to watch the sunrise. I love to kind of wake up with the rest of the world. That just fulfills me so much inside. For someone else, that might not. But that's something that works for me, so I incorporate that in. Next is find something tangible that you can carry with you that reminds you why you're doing this. Like, sobriety is hard. You're going to have so many moments in it where you kind of like almost want to give up and you think, well, what am I even doing this for? But you're doing this for you. And you are literally the most important thing to yourself. Mm-hmm. And you may not be able to see that right now, but I promise you that is so valid, like so true. And so having something tangible, whether it's a note that you've written to yourself or it's a bottle of an oil, and keep it with you. Keep your AA chip with you, whatever it is. I have my 2-year sobriety chip in my wallet. I keep it there all the time. Number 2 or number 3, mindset. Start paying attention to how you talk to yourself. Start paying attention to how you speak about yourself to other people. You are transitioning and working through so much right now. Don't try to step back from judgment. And I know it's all of these things are so much easier said than done, but again, it's repetition, it's practice, it's consistency, it's showing up every single day. And eventually these little bitty things that you're implementing are going to become habit and routine like they are for me now. Mm-hmm. It took me forever to journal in the very beginning. And now it's like, I sit there and journal for 3 hours because I absolutely love the conversation or the flow that I have going back and forth between what I'm writing. Mm-hmm. So, mindset. And then I also say, find yourself some sort of support system, some sort of group. AA is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful modality and tool to use through sobriety, but it doesn't have to be the only one. I personally am not a fan of AA for myself, but that is just my own experience that I had. There are hundreds and thousands of meetings out there, and they're all different. But if AA isn't necessarily your thing or something you want to try, go to therapy, find a coach, find maybe an outpatient rehab center that lets you go in and talk to patients that are staying there. There's so many different ways that we can surround ourselves with uplifting and supportive people. We just have to go look for it. Mm-hmm.
And you have to be willing to try, I think, right? Because
Yes.
You tried. And I'll say you took what you needed and leave the rest because you love the chip concept.
I absolutely. And I have the big book. I love the big book.
Right.
It's almost like the Bible for me. Like, I don't necessarily put my all into it, but it's very beautiful. It has very beautiful stories. It has very, very beautiful teachings that you can gain from it, just as the big book does. Mm-hmm. I don't follow it verbatim. I didn't go through the 12 steps in order or the way that most people do. And that's okay because I'm still working my sobriety. Mm-hmm. And I think as long as you're working it and trying different things, you're doing something. It doesn't matter if it looks like the person next to you, because the things that I do in my sobriety are going to be so different than the person right next to me, disregard if we had the same upbringing or not. We're different human beings. We're different souls. We have different loves and passions and desires. So try to have grace when you're looking at someone else do things. Whenever you try it and it doesn't work out, it's okay. Just try something different.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Patsy, I think I've been in a chill since I've been listening to you talk, and it's just so beautiful, and I was so excited to have you on. So thank you for sharing your story. It's so beautiful. I know it's tough. I see your emotions, and I appreciate it because you sharing your story and other people sharing their stories is what changes things, right? Is what changes and kind of creates like a ripple effect of people being okay sharing. So
and to that, I really want to say, don't, and again, way easier said than done in the beginning, don't be afraid to reach out to anybody. It doesn't matter if you are feeling just a little anxious and you want to chat, or you're feeling super anxious and you need to chat. People in sobriety, in the sobriety world, and therapy world, and this whole general supporting world, we thrive. We're literally here for you guys. I tell people all the time, I'm huge on Instagram. And so I tell people all the time in my stories and on my posts, if you want to reach out to me in my DMs, hit me up. I'll chat with you. I don't mind. I'm not a coach who you have to pay me in order for me to have a conversation with you. You don't ever have to give me a single dollar. I'm here to help you get pumped up about your life, because it's so worth living. And I want to help other people see that. So definitely, even if it's not me, if it's someone else, please reach out. Let people know that you're struggling. Let people know whatever it is that you need from them in that moment. Because again, we're not mind readers, nor is the other person, so communication is key.
And you're not a burden, because we all got stuff.
Oh my God, yes. I have so many friends that aren't even in recovery. They'd be like, man, do you have time to talk? Because
you're like, of course I do.
I'm like,
so
yeah,
on that
absolutely.
note of you sharing, Patsy, where can our listeners find you for all that inspiration, and if they want to DM you?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook is just Patsy Berridge, and my Instagram handle is just Patsy_Ann11. I'm on Instagram more than I am anything.
Yeah, you are. All right, awesome. We will definitely link that for you guys in the show notes too. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future awesome interviews like with people like Patsy. And I'm obviously have to thank you again, because you're just such a beautiful soul.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Well, thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. You know